Hey, it's Zim, and should you play Tainted Grail Conquest? Now, this game has been in early access for a little while, and it's finally released. I've played through it a lot in early access, back when it was one game. They've actually split this into two. This is their rogue Lite version, so tons of replayability, things like that. And then they have like a more story-centric game that they're going to be releasing later. Now, this game is available for $19.99, though currently it's on sale because it just released for $17.99. It's very much in the same vein as Slay the Spire, with some added features that I don't know if it really needs. It also takes a design philosophy that I'm not ecstatic with. Now, you'll notice I have a run currently happening, but we'll start a new run. And you'll also notice easy mode. Now, I'm all for games giving you options for choices on difficulty, but this is actually where I have my biggest problem. So if we click easy mode, it says story mode will reduce the game difficulty to minimum. The game was designed to provide a loop of losing, getting better, and overcoming the difficulty, but if you want to discover the story without much hassle, you can do it here. And this is where my biggest problem is with this game. It's designed to where you are meant to die. Now, in my opinion, roguelike games, yeah, of course you're going to die during runs, but it shouldn't be designed in a way where you're going to die almost guaranteed before the run has even started, because you haven't unlocked certain things. In Slay the Spire, for example, if I play Slay the Spire for the very first time, my inexperience might get me killed, sure, but the game is designed in a way that I could make it all the way through, no problem. Right? In this game, the way encounters are done here, it's pretty easy to just get hit hard by a vicious encounter because there's seemingly no real, like, design choices on where monsters are placed, and so then you just die and it sucks. Now, of course, roguelike, it's not too much of a time loss. You also unlock things for future runs. That's what this kind of means by providing a loop of losing and getting better. And I also tend to have a problem with that because when you provide me with inadequate tools and then give me better tools, the more I slightly progress, I'm just going to get frustrated with the game. This wasn't always the way it was in early access. It was actually quite easy. And I'm glad that they've turned up the difficulty, but I think they've turned it up a little bit too much. We've also seen some bugs still. The optimization's a lot better, but could definitely still be better. And then there have been some problems with some enemies not exactly telling you what they're going to do. But let's go ahead and jump into a run. We won't be on easy mode. Let's do a new run. So as you can see here, you're presented with different character options. All of these start out locked except for Weird Hunter. I had these during early access. We basically had access to all the characters except for kind of these last three until near the end of early access. But since I've just been forced to restart over, we have the Weird Hunter and what looks like the Summoner. This is the most recent one I've unlocked. But we'll jump into the Weird Hunter because that's probably what you're going to be playing with first. I find that the Weird Hunter is not a great class to start with. His ability is pretty annoying, especially once you start understanding the game's difficulty in encounters. But essentially, every time you hit something 4 times, you mark them with vulnerability for that round, so you do essentially double damage. But we'll jump in. Overall, the game's quality is really good. Graphically, it's pretty pleasing. The art style, it's definitely that dark Arthurian style art you'd want for a game like this. It's fully voice acted, very well done voice acting. Not much for me to complain about on that front. It's mostly with some of the gameplay decisions that they've decided to make. I do notice a lot of frame drops, although that could just be VSync, which tends to be pretty punishing on these indie games that offer it. So just be aware of that as well. All right, and welcome to your starting point. Now, you'll go through a brief tutorial and introduction, but since I've already started playing, we've already skipped that. But this is the town that you're kind of building up. Throughout your playthroughs, you're going to unlock more characters who will help you out. Like I have the blacksmith and I have the candle maker already here. We also have a lost soul. Now these people will give you bonuses and benefits as long as you can pay for it. Down here you have weird candles. We'll get to that in a little bit. And we'll go ahead and jump out into the adventure. Now this is one of the biggest complaints I have for this game, which is they've gone ahead and fully like 3D rendered a lot of all this, like moving on the map, fighting combat, and that's fine, but it also doesn't feel necessary. And you'll see once we get into combat that it's like not utilized at all. Also, you get to create your character. The character customization is not bad, but not amazing. And then you can unlock cosmetics throughout the runs. I think it's also pretty underutilized. I don't feel like it adds anything to the game, especially because as you choose your classes and different things like that, like you're not going to really notice your character much. But once you go into the wild, you're into the weird. This is where weird candles come in. They'll essentially make it to where you can see easier. So let's go ahead and bring up a candle. It'll also essentially give you vision on where monsters are. So I see that there's an enemy there, but I don't exactly know what it is. So if we get a little bit closer, we can see it's a pack of enemies. And it's just this guy. You can also see his threat circle, although most of the time you're not going to be able to get around enemies. They're there for a specific reason. You have to fight them. Now, my problem with the weird candle is it lets me see this enemy and what other enemies might be next to him, but unless you're experienced with the game, you don't know what that means. You don't know if that is a huge threat or if that's, you know, just an easy guy for you to fight. Alright, so this is the combat, and like I said, very Slay the Spire style. Blocks, things like this, cost in the left-hand corner. Your energy is here. Clicking on that will end turn. You actually have potions in this game. You can buy more through people that you've helped, as long as you have the coin for it. You also have an ulti, which I'll go over in a bit. But generally, it's just also the style of drag a card to the enemy you want to attack. If there's only one, you can actually just click on it, and it'll attack that enemy. Now, you have full kind of camera rotation, zoom out and zoom in if you want it. Once again, nice features, but they don't really add anything to the game. And as we see, like, if we do an overhead swing here, like, the animations for it aren't amazing. So we can do a... enemies will always tell you what they're doing. So in this case, he's about to hit me for 5 to 6 damage. Kind of a little bit of randomization there. Same for us, though. We can, as we level up and get better, we increase our strength, which will increase our minimum maximum damage. And then there are also cards that help you essentially always guarantee it. So this says your next attack would do maximum damage. So we'll do a block, and then we'll attack. So you'll notice both his attacks felt very samey, like there wasn't any unique animation. We don't really have any design control over his outfit right now because we haven't unlocked cosmetics, but even if we did, it's not that noticeable. I'm gonna end turn here. And then that's my biggest problem right there, is enemy attacks don't actually ever collide with your character. So enemies will do their attack animations at nothing, essentially, or kind of in front of you. There's no real collision, there's no feel of being hit. It's just kind of awkwardly there, and that's fine, but like I just feel like all the effort that probably went into making this a 3D style game where you can walk around on a map really doesn't add anything to this game. So we can see he's going to do 2 attacks. So can we kill him would be the question. He's got 2 hunter's marks on him. So we can do an overhead strike, do our broad reach, and then small strike will deal 3 hits, and because I used my reach at 14 damage apiece. And then, so ultimates, this gets stronger as you let it build up, essentially. So right now it'll do 17 to 25 damage. And that'll basically just kill him. So, perfect. And so the ultimate's cool. It's often needed, especially against more enemies. So like normally you'll encounter mobs that are like 3 enemies, and that's the far more dangerous mobs. Once you level up, you get to add a new card to your deck, and then you usually get a passive as well. These are all random, which can definitely be a problem. You can definitely lose a game because you start a fight with no blocks and all the enemies are doing 2 attacks each, and then you just die. Pretty frustrating, but that's kind of par for the course for a roguelike. Last Resort is pretty decent, costs you 2 energy, but means you lose an energy next turn. There's a lot of different effects like that where like they'll either buff you for the turn and then the turn after, or they'll cost you extra on the next turn type of things. But we'll take the double strike here. And these are the different passives. And first attack card each combat costs 0 is insane. Duplicate every 7th is okay. And we'll just take opening strike. And then we're back to this field here to wander around. You can also notice a mini-map in the corner there. You'll find milestones. One thing I've noticed is clicking on certain things on the map are like pretty frustrating. Like sometimes like the character will walk up to it and then it won't interact, and so you have to keep clicking on it to get it to interact. Just minor things that are somewhat of a nuisance that once again come with a 3D map that I don't know if needed to be 3D. At least for me, it just doesn't do much. However, they can give you a vision, which means you'll burn less of the candle. You can also pick up additional candles from them instead. We've already freed the candle maker, so it's really not worth me going for that. So we're actually going to go back. So you'll notice I've already progressed through the candle maker. And I've unlocked him, so I don't have to go get him again, because he's kind of a permanent unlock. We're also on the second boss, so because I've already died here once, it doesn't reset you all the way back. Kind of a weird roguelike thing to do. But it's kind of their style, because you're essentially going to fight 4 different bosses and then 1 true boss, and then once you complete all of that run, then you start over at a higher difficulty. No, like I said in early access before, the difficulty was fairly easy, that you basically didn't die to anyone, and so it was all one smooth run, and then you increase difficulty, which makes sense, because in the initial hit, the initial run, it shouldn't be overwhelmingly hard, and yet they've changed that to where I've died 3 times now, and I'm on going to the second boss now, and I feel like it's more of a frustration and a nuisance, and I've been cheated, instead of like, oh man, like now it's getting hard. It's like, nope, this fight was impossible for me based on enemies and what I have in hand. So great, I gotta restart and hope that that doesn't happen. Just kind of frustrations. Obviously we see him doing something. 8 to 10 damage, so we'll want to play block. Overhead swing. I don't want to do small strikes, because that would mean I would proc my Hunter's Mark, making him vulnerable, but then I couldn't really follow up with much damage. Not enough to kill him anyway. So we'll block, and we'll attack, and then we're actually going to set up a broad reach for next turn. So you'll notice we have different buffs down here, so my base damage obviously increased because of my broad reach. But also on them, if they have any special benefits, it'll show you as well. So like we have stun in hand. Some enemies are immune to stun, so it's also very important to keep note of that. Now, because we've already skipped the golem, because I've already killed him, the golem is the first boss. The golem actually has a frustrating mechanic, which is every time he takes 10 hits, he spawns a ad, essentially, an additional guy. However, at least currently, whenever you stun him, he'll also do that. His abilities, nothing says that he will do that, though, which is really frustrating. If you have mechanics like this where you're going to tell people, like, this is what they're doing, oh, by the way, like, these are his abilities, if you do this, it'll do this, you also need to include that, because you get blindsided by it. It's like, oh, I'm going to stun the golem. Oh, the golem spawned a guy. Well, that's weird. He shouldn't have done that. And then, like, I was very careful to count, making sure I wasn't triggering his 10, and maybe I just was misunderstanding, and that wasn't the case. It was that he just spawns a guy every time you stun him, which is super frustrating, because the game does not tell you that. And a game like this, where information is very important and key to how you're going to play this game, it really needs to be on top of that. These are weird cards. They're granted to you by your candle. You either have to play them for their playability, or they'll do an if not played ability. So if I don't play it for the 8 to 13 damage, I will lose 50% damage next turn. But we're going to do small strikes first to set up our vulnerability. And then we're probably going to double strike here. So then we also have the gear upgrading system. Because we're not actually equipping weapons or armor, we equip rune stones. These rune stones all have different benefits. So obviously, like, for the correct tier, if it's in our weapon slot, the first time in turn of combat, increase our damage by 50%, or if it's armor, we gain 75 armor. Armor will just reduce enemy damage. It's not like a block or anything like that, so just keep that in mind. And yeah, we'll just put it in the armor slot, why not? And as we can see, our candles kind of wear down, so our circle's a lot smaller, but you can just burn a new one. Head to this milestone here. But as you can see, I've clicked on it like twice before it realized that's what I was trying to get it to do.
As the flickering light of the weird candle combines with the milestone's faint radiance, the surrounding darkness is pushed even further back.
Like I said, the voice acting is very good. For the most part, the graphics are fine. The dark art style is cool. I enjoy the themes behind it, but there's definitely some frustration here. Get into another battle. The music's also really good. There's a special soundtrack for boss fights, which is decent. Reminds me very Viking-esque, I guess, which may not exactly fit the themes, but it's fine. So as you can see, fights can be very easy, and then you can also just run into a pack that just stomps you into the ground for no reason. The randomization for these mobs can be very frustrating, because when you look over, like, it makes me question why to have a candle, right? Because the candle is going to give you sight, but, like, if I can't tell what a pack is based on their imagery, the little squares, which don't really tell me anything, then I'm going to just not care about the candle, right? Because, like, every fight's just a gamble. But it's fine. It's not bad. Raging Blade. Yeah, they're cracked here, so we'll obviously just put that in our sword slot. And we have a Cursed Healer.
Godless healing. Godless healing.
So there are also vendors out in this world, so this Cursed Healer isn't going to join my town, at least not for now, but I can still buy things from him. I think normally potions are probably the best choice, but they're pretty expensive too. Which it should be. I don't feel like a game should have a ton of healing to where it's super easy, right? So as you can see, there's 3 enemies here, but I have no clue what those mean in terms of actual difficulty. But he's guarding a person, so maybe we want to rescue them. So enemies also have hidden actions, kind of like what you'd expect in Slay the Spire, which is fine. I don't have a problem with hidden enemy actions. I just have problems when like enemies do certain things that you should have base knowledge on. Like, once again, the golem being stunned and spawning an enemy is either a bug, or it should tell me every time he's stunned, he's also going to spawn an enemy. And this is basically the game. Going through mobs to kill through them, and to make your character stronger so you can fight the boss, so then you can progress. You're going to try to save people to unlock more benefits for your town, which obviously just helps you throughout a run. But I'm going to go ahead and skip here to either the boss fight or me dying and showing you kind of the rewards you'll get for the end of each run. Alright, so we just died to a random enemy mob that was far stronger than any of the enemy mobs I've encountered so far after beating the second boss. And then you'll be presented with this screen after being defeated. Total score, and then it'll unlock certain rewards. The far end here is a new character class, and these are going to be cards and or passives. So, these are the cards that are now added to the pool when I level up. It'll tell you how far you've gotten. So I've rescued 3 of the 7 villagers. I've yet to find the true boss fight, and I've not saved the 13 souls from corruption. Show me my progress overall. And then you can start over or take a break. And now, once again, if you hit start over, it would start you progress to where you are from the last boss you beat. So since I beat the first 2 bosses now, it would put me into the 3rd zone. Which is fine, I guess. But I don't see why there are enemy fights that are harder than the boss fights. Like, I haven't died to the bosses. I've died to a random enemy mob that is just far stronger, or that I've gotten unlucky against because of cards in hand. And that seems odd to me. That seems like bad game design, in my personal opinion. And so, like, with easy mode, that shouldn't exist in a roguelite game. In my opinion. Like, it shouldn't be to where you've designed your game to just slap the player randomly. But if you don't want that to happen, I guess you can turn down the difficulty, because most of this game isn't that difficult on the base difficulty. Now, difficulty will increase once you beat your runs. You can increase it to difficulty 2 and stuff like that, and that should be where the difficulty gets higher. But the initial run should never be, oh, we've designed it to where random enemy mobs might just slap you down. Not because of any specific way you built your deck, which is probably my other problem with this game, which is there's very little in terms of customization. Essentially, you're kind of locked into a build based on the class that you've picked at the start, which obviously in the start you only have 1 class to choose from, and then you slightly modify it from there. So overall, should you play Tainted Grail Conquest? If you like roguelikes, if you like Slay the Spire and you like what you saw, it's not a bad game. I might recommend waiting for it to be on sale, because I do think that $20 for this game is a little bit steep. Not because the quality isn't there, but because I think you'll get bored with it. I definitely did during early access, and coming back to it on a full release and playing it for a few hours now, I don't have a very strong sense of wanting to come back to it. I don't have this desire to keep pushing myself in Tainted Grail to unlock all these character classes and whatnot. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.